Millionaire catches triplets eating grass in the yard. What he did next changed everything. April sunlight spread like honey across the emerald lawn, glimmering on the navy Armani suit worn by John Blackwood, the man everyone called the youngest billionaire in Silicon Valley. By now, he should have been in Los Angeles, smiling before Fortune's camera like a man who had everything: power, fame, and the perfect fiancée. But that morning, in a garden trimmed as precisely as a painting, he found 3 little girls, thin, disheveled-haired, dirt-stained kneed, kneeling on the grass, plucking young blades and putting them into their mouths. What on earth? John stepped back, heart pounding, the sunlight blurring his vision. Rebecca, his fiancée, appeared on the porch, her white dress fluttering in the light. She smirked, her voice lazy. "Don't panic, John. Probably some kids from the housing block behind the garden. They said they were hungry, so I told them, if they're hungry, the grass is free." The words were light as air, yet struck his chest like a whip. John glanced at Rebecca, her lips still curled with arrogance, her eyes hollow, then turned away. Leaving the stunned photo crew behind, he strode down the steps. The 3 girls were still there. Their hair gleamed under the sun, their skin so pale it seemed translucent, their tiny hands trembling. No one cried. No one spoke. Only the faint sound of grass being chewed. John knelt down, heedless of his $1,000 suit. "My dears, why are you eating this?" His voice came out hoarse, slow, and warm. None of them answered. Then the one in the middle lifted her face, and in that instant, the world stopped. Her eyes, emerald green, not just similar. They were his. Something inside John cracked, a quiet, painful recognition he could neither deny nor escape. The rare color passed down from his late grandmother, a hue that only he still carried in the Blackwood family. "What are your names?" he asked softly, a lump rising in his throat. The girl with those eyes replied, "My name's Anna." The wind seemed to pause. Then the girl on the right looked up, her gaze like a mirror of the same soul. "My name's Athena." Finally, the smallest one spoke in a trembling whisper, as if afraid her voice would shatter the fragile air around them. "And I'm Ashley." 3 names, 3 pairs of eyes, one face repeating through time. John's chest tightened. He had seen these features before, that delicate chin, those long lashes, the gentle sorrow at the corner of the mouth. A melody from another life. "Where do you live?" he asked, his usual composure slipping away. Anna, the eldest, pointed past the 8-meter ivy-covered wall. "Over there, by the old brick buildings. Mommy works there." John turned. In the distance lay a row of shabby apartments he had never noticed. Westland Apartments, only a few hundred meters away, yet belonging to another world entirely. He swallowed hard and asked quietly, "And your mother's name?" Athena lowered her head, her green eyes glistening. "Her name is Alice," she whispered like a prayer. John leaned down, taking Athena's tiny hand as she tried to pick up a fallen blade of grass. "Where is your mother now?" he asked gently, afraid even the breeze might steal her answer. Anna looked up, her bright eyes reflecting the sky. "Mommy's cleaning houses. We stay with Grandma, but she's sick. She's been coughing a lot and can't get up anymore." John squeezed the small hand. The wind carried the mingled scent of jasmine and dry earth, the scent of a humble life he had long forgotten. He stood slowly, gazing at the 3 pale faces dappled with sunlight. 3 identical eyes, each a reflection of his own, tightening his chest with something he couldn't name. "Are you hungry?" he asked softly, his voice low and tender. "Not grass, real food, rice, bread, something warm." The girls looked up at him, their eyes a blend of fear and hope, as if they couldn't believe someone truly meant that question. Then all three nodded, very slightly, as though afraid the miracle would vanish if they moved too quickly. "John, what are you doing?" Rebecca's voice rang out from the porch, cold as shattering glass. She folded her arms, the white dress fluttering, her face flawless and distant. "The photographer's waiting. They'll be leaving soon, and our meeting with the wedding designer is at 4. John didn't turn. His voice came out flat. "Tell them to postpone. I have something else to do." "Something else?" Rebecca scoffed, her laugh metallic. "For 3 filthy little beggars?" He didn't answer. He bent down and extended his hand toward the children. "Come, I'll take you home." 3 pairs of eyes glanced at him, then at each other, hesitant, but Anna's small hand trembled as she placed it in his first. "John, you're canceling the shoot for 3 beggar kids?" Rebecca shouted. But he didn't hear. The wind carried her voice away across the stone courtyard. The 3 girls walked beside him. Between the polished shoes of a billionaire, their tiny bare feet stepped over the cracked pavement. In just a few hundred meters, the world changed color. From golden engraved iron gates to peeling walls, from the scent of lavender to the stench of damp concrete, from silence to the screech of bus brakes and barking dogs in the distance. On the way to take the girls home, John stopped by a bakery and bought each of them a pastry. Little Ashley, the smallest of the 3, gathered her courage, held his hand, and said softly, "Sir, could you get one more? For Mommy, she's at home." The girls ate as they skipped along the street, crumbs on their lips, laughter fluttering like tiny birds. John watched them, a strange, aching warmth blooming inside his chest, something that felt like recognition. "Our house is right there," Athena said brightly, pointing toward an old apartment block. "4th floor, room 512. The elevator's broken, but we're used to climbing." John looked up at the building, peeling walls, cracked windows, clotheslines drooping like open wounds. He had graced the cover of Fortune, flown in private helicopters, but he had never set foot in this kind of world. The stairway was narrow. Cigarette smoke clung to the air, mixing with mildew and the faint hum of a radio from somewhere above. Each step felt heavy, as though he were climbing into a sealed-off part of his own past. At last, they reached apartment 512. Anna knocked 3 times, soft, hesitant. "Mommy's probably home," she whispered. The door swung open, and time stopped. Standing before him was Alice. Her hair was hastily tied, a few strands falling against her cheek. A faded T-shirt slipped at the shoulders, and her deep brown eyes were rimmed with exhaustion. But what stole his breath wasn't her weariness. It was the way she looked at him, guarded, stunned, and carrying a pain that had never quite healed. "Why are you with my daughters? Where did you take them?" Her voice was hoarse but steady, one hand resting protectively on her child's shoulder. John drew a slow breath and spoke gently. "Don't hide it from me, Alice. They're my children, aren't they?" She froze. In the dim hallway light, her eyes flickered with a mix of fury and trembling disbelief. "Girls, go inside." "But Mom—" "Inside." The 3 little girls obeyed quietly, glancing back at him before vanishing behind a worn curtain. The door closed almost completely, leaving only John and Alice face to face. No cars, no wind, only the sound of their breaths mingling in that narrow, aging corridor. "6 years," she said softly, each word sharp as a blade. "You disappeared, not a word. And now you stand here, saying things no one needs to hear." "I didn't know, Alice. I didn't know I had children." She let out a small, bitter laugh, a sound so fragile it seemed to break in the air. "Didn't know? Or didn't want to know?" She stepped closer, her words coming faster now, each one landing hard against his chest. "I called, I wrote, I waited, but every letter came back. Your lawyer said I'd been compensated, $300,000 and a silence agreement. Was that enough to let you sleep soundly on your satin sheets?" John said nothing. The yellow light from the window fell across her face, illuminating a tear that hadn't yet fallen. "I thought," he murmured, "I was fixing everything. But it turns out I was only killing the last real thing I had left." Alice turned away, wrapping her arms around herself, as if holding her own trembling in place. "Why are you here, John? To buy forgiveness? The girls don't need your money." "No," he said, voice unsteady. "Not money. I just want to know them. Even a little." "Don't mistake this for a reunion," she said coldly, her tone calm but seething with old bitterness. "You've seen them. They live, they breathe, they've grown up without a single cent from you. Now go back to your perfect world. There's no room for pity here." John stood still, his throat tight, his voice barely more than a whisper. "Alice, I saw them eating grass, on my lawn. God, they were starving, and His voice broke. The faint light from the small window slanted across her face, casting a long shadow on the cracked wall. She clenched her hands, color rising to her cheeks. He couldn't tell if it was shame, anger, or despair. "The babysitter canceled last minute," she said, trembling but trying to hold her composure. "I had no one else. If I missed Mrs. Amanda's cleaning job, I'd lose the contract, the rent money, everything. I just told them to sit outside for a few hours. I didn't know they'd wander that far." Her voice cracked, thin as thread. "I did my best, John. I swear I did." Silence filled the room. Outside, the afternoon light filtered through a torn curtain, scattering over the stained floor like pale, tired gold. John looked around. The apartment was small and old, but spotless, heartbreakingly neat. On the wall were crayon drawings, 3 little blonde girls, a smiling woman, and a man standing far away. Only a shadow. A scratched wooden table beside a frayed armchair, a few cloth toys mended many times. Everything was poor, yet every inch breathed love. John leaned back against the wall, the world falling silent. Only his heartbeat remained, loud and uneven. "I'm not asking for forgiveness," he said finally. "I'm asking for a chance to make things right." "Tomorrow," Alice replied, her tone like ice. 4 o'clock, when the girls go to tutoring, then you leave. No more." She closed the door. John stood motionless. From behind it came a small, curious voice. "Mommy, who was that man?" No answer, only silence. John lowered his head. The last light of the day streamed through a cracked window, casting a greenish reflection on the wall, the same color as the eyes of those 3 little girls. And he understood. What he had lost 6 years ago now had faces, voices, and the breath of his own blood. That night, John didn't sleep a single minute. The city outside was drowned in silence, yet inside the vast mansion, everything seemed to shrink around him. The amber light reflected off an untouched glass of wine, glimmering like 3 pairs of emerald eyes, replaying endlessly in his mind. That innocent gaze under the sun, and the question, "Mommy, who was that man?" He sat by the window all night, watching the sky shift from black to gray, from gray to rose. For the first time in years, dawn wasn't the beginning of work. It was the beginning of redemption. By 4 in the afternoon, Boston's sky was wrapped in honey-colored light. A soft breeze stirred the worn curtain before apartment 512. John stood there for a moment, listening to the distant hum of traffic from the street below. In his hand was a large paper bag. Inside were 3 identical teddy bears, their brown fur soft as clouds, each wearing a pale yellow ribbon. He had spent his whole afternoon choosing them in Boston's most luxurious toy store, hoping they would make the girls smile. The door opened. Alice stood there, her hair neatly tied, her old t-shirt clean, a faint scent of coffee and laundry soap lingering around her. "You actually came," she said calmly, though her lips trembled just a little. "I promised I would," John replied. "I brought some small gifts for the girls." Her eyes flicked to the bag, then she shook her head slightly. "They're not here. The girls are at the art center right now. I thought you only said that to be polite." "No," he said softly. "I came to talk to you." Alice hesitated for a few seconds, then stepped aside. "Come in, but don't stay long." The small apartment welcomed him with quiet warmth, the smell of toasted bread, colored paper, and the slow passage of time. On the wall hung crayon drawings, 3 blonde girls, a woman holding their hands, and farther away, a man's shadow standing under the rain. "This is where you live?" John asked, his voice almost a whisper. Alice poured coffee without looking at him. "Not everyone has a mansion with a lake view." He nodded, not arguing. The bitter aroma of coffee and warm steam reminded him of their old mornings, when she had been his assistant, and they had stayed up all night in an office flooded with neon light. Back then, he thought he knew her. Now he wasn't sure at all. "I once thought I was right," John said quietly. "That leaving was the best thing I could do, but it turns out I was only running away." Alice set the cup down, her gaze trembling faintly. "You ran for 6 years, John, long enough for a child to learn to tie her shoes and stop believing in fairy tales." He lowered his head. "I didn't come to justify myself. It's just, I never imagined they'd grow up not knowing their father's face." She let out a weary, broken laugh. "You're only realizing that now?" He said nothing. His eyes wandered across the small apartment, modest but spotless. 3 school bags hung neatly on the wall. The fridge was covered with drawings of hearts, rainbows, and shaky handwriting. "Mom, I love you." A faint sound came from the door. Then laughter, bright, pure laughter that shattered the heavy silence of the afternoon. The 3 little girls burst in, golden hair flying, dusty canvas shoes, cheeks flushed from play. "Mommy, today our teacher let us paint on a giant paper wall," Anna exclaimed, her fingers still stained with watercolor. "And I won the spinning game," Athena cheered. Ashley came in last, holding her porcelain doll tight. When she saw John, she stopped short. "It's the man from yesterday," she whispered, wide-eyed. An elderly teacher smiled from the doorway. "I brought the girls back as usual. Same time tomorrow?" "Thank you, Miss Patricia," Alice said, nodding politely. When the door closed, the tiny apartment seemed even smaller, 4 adults and 3 little souls filling the space with quiet anticipation. "Girls," Alice said gently, "this is Mr. John. He wanted to say hello?" John stood up, his heart pounding. He set the bag on the table and took out the 3 teddy bears, identical, soft, and carefully tied with yellow ribbons. "I brought you something," he said. "I hope you'll like them." Anna frowned slightly. "But they all look the same?" "I wanted to be fair," John said, forcing a small smile. Athena tilted her head. "But if they're all the same, how will we know which one is ours?" The innocent question froze him, and in that instant he understood. Fairness wasn't giving the same thing to everyone. It was seeing each child as their own world. Then Ashley, the youngest, lifted her face, her green eyes shimmering. "Are you our daddy?" No one breathed. The afternoon light spilled through the thin curtain, pouring over his face. John bent down, eyes glistening, voice trembling. "Yes, I am." Anna blinked. "Then why didn't you come sooner?" He pressed his lips together and answered slowly, "Because I was a fool, and I was afraid." "Are you still afraid now?" Athena asked, serious as an adult. John smiled faintly, his eyes red. No, not anymore. The three girls looked at one another, then quietly sat down, hugging their teddy bears to their chests. They didn't smile, only sat still, as if accepting something new their young hearts didn't yet understand. As the sunset deepened outside the window, John stood up. "Can I come again?" he asked softly. Alice didn't answer right away. She looked at her daughters, then at him. "After school," she said at last. 3:30 at Adasdam School, if you still want to." John nodded. "I'll be there, and I won't be late." The last rays of evening glowed on his hair, lighting up the faint, trembling smile, the first in 6 long years when he finally knew he still had a chance to be a father. But fate rarely lets redemption come without a price. That afternoon, rain fell quietly, like a thin curtain draped over the city. As the automatic gates opened, the black car slid along the white gravel drive, where 2 rows of old oaks cast water-darkened shadows. John sat motionless behind the wheel for a moment, listening to the wipers beat steadily, like the heartbeat of someone hiding something. Inside the mansion, warm yellow light pooled on the cold marble floor. His wet footsteps echoed emptily through the vast hall. Victoria was waiting in the living room, her posture straight, her wavy blonde hair perfectly set, lips painted a deep red, beauty assembled down to the last detail. But in her hands was no magazine. It was a hastily printed photograph. She didn't rise when he walked in. "How strange," she said, her voice soft as silk. "This picture isn't part of any of your PR campaigns." John froze. In the photo, he was standing in front of an old apartment, holding a bag of toys, while 3 little blonde girls clung to his coat. In the background, Alice appeared blurred in the doorway. He stayed silent for a long time. The rain kept tapping at the window, each drop landing straight into his chest. "Where did you get it?" he asked at last, his voice low but steady. "Doesn't matter," she replied. "What matters is that you seem to have found another family, another past, and 3 children." John exhaled, took off his coat, and hung it on the rack. "Not a past, Vic. A present. What I've been running from." Victoria tilted her head slightly, her eyes cold and sharp. "So you're telling me those 3 children are yours?" He looked straight at her, his voice slow and firm. "Yes, they're mine." The air in the room seemed to freeze. Crystal light fell across her face, highlighting eyes that trembled faintly. She set the photo down on the table and gave a small laugh, no longer proud, almost tired. "I suppose the woman in the picture is their mother?" "Yes." "She knows you're getting married?" "Maybe she does now." Victoria stayed quiet for a few seconds, then let out a short, bitter laugh. "You have impeccable timing, John. In a month, we could have been the power couple of the year. I had everything lined up, the launch, the speeches, the magazine covers. And now you're telling me you have 3 children?" "I'm done lying," he said, his voice rough. "I don't have the strength to keep acting." She looked at him for a long time. In her gaze were anger, hurt, and a sadness without a name. "I should hate you," she said, voice catching. "And yet, I feel relieved. Maybe because at last I know I've been loving a man who was too real." "Vic," he began. "No," she cut him off. "I don't want to hear an apology. I just want clarity. I won't compete with a woman who's already paid the price for you. And I won't tie myself to a man whose heart is somewhere else." She slipped the diamond ring from her finger and placed it on the table between them. Its cold light flickered once, then died. "Let's call off the wedding, John, before we both become liars." He looked at the ring for a long time, then nodded. "I agree." Victoria smiled faintly, this time genuinely soft. "I used to think if I lost you, I'd lose my mind. But maybe I'm only losing a role I played. She picked up the photo, glanced at it one last time. Those 3 children, they have your eyes. I hope you don't disappoint them the way you did me. She walked out of the room, her heels striking the marble floor in steady, decisive beats. When the door closed, John stood still under the warm light, his heart heavy. Outside, the rain kept falling, mingling with distant thunder. He looked down at the ring on the table, the emblem of ambition, power, and deceit, then closed his fist around it. For the first time in years, he knew he had just lost everything, so that he could begin again as a true man. The next morning, Boston awoke under the pale light of autumn. The rain had long stopped, but the air still carried a faint trace of dampness. Along the rows of oak trees lining the street, drops of water slid down slowly, clear, pure, as if the world had been washed clean after a long night. John woke early. The vast mansion felt empty, the ticking of the clock in the living room echoing alone. His hand brushed the surface of the table where, the night before, Victoria had laid the photograph. Now only a faint watermark remained. He looked around and realized that everything was perfect to the point of meaninglessness. The paintings, the crystal glasses, the silk curtains, all meticulously arranged, yet devoid of life. He made himself a cup of coffee, but didn't take a sip. The bitter aroma reminded him of Alice's brown eyes shimmering under the dim kitchen light. Her voice echoed in his mind. "I don't need you to promise me anything. I just need you to keep your word to yourself." For the first time, he understood what it meant to keep a promise, not to the world, but to his own conscience. He left the mansion while the sun was still low. No chauffeur, no convoy. Just him, a white shirt, a paper bag of warm bread in hand. On the way, he stopped by a small shop to buy sunflowers. Alice's favorite, something he remembered even after 6 years. When he reached the Westland apartments, the air was different, filled with the calls of children, the clatter of bicycles, the smell of fresh pastries drifting through open windows. This was not the world of contracts and stock markets. It was real life, where people knew each other by name, not by title. Alice opened the door, surprised to see him. "You're here this early?" she asked. Her tone still kept a polite distance, but the sharpness from before had softened. "I brought breakfast," John said, lifting the bag, his breath visible in the cool morning air. "And I was hoping I could walk the princesses to school." The 3 girls came running out, eyes lighting up at the sight of the bag. "You came back?" Anna squealed. "Not Mister anymore," he said, kneeling down to meet their gaze. "Call me Dad, if you want to." The 3 small faces froze. Then Athena, the middle one, giggled. "Then do you know how to do hair, Dad?" "Not yet," John smiled slowly. "But I can learn, just like I'm learning how to be a person again." Alice stood by the door, watching them. The morning breeze played through her hair, carrying the scent of coffee and sunlight. Something inside her quietly melted. Not full trust, not yet, but the beginning of forgiveness. On the way to school, John walked with the 3 girls. He let Athena ride on his shoulders, while Anna held his left hand and Ashley his right. People turned to look, not because they recognized him, but because the sight of their small, happy family was beautiful to behold. At the school gate, John crouched to tie Anna's shoelace. "Daddy, are you going to work today?" she asked. "Yes," he said gently. "But I'll finish early. I want to pick you up." "You won't forget, right?" Ashley asked, looking up at him. He pressed a hand to his chest. "If I do, my heart will remind me." That afternoon, Boston was bathed in a soft golden hue. Sunlight slanted through the maple trees, spilling over the playground of Carver Elementary, where laughter rang like music. John stood by the gate, hands in his pockets, palms slightly trembling. An unfamiliar feeling for a man who had faced boardrooms and contracts, but now felt nervous simply waiting for his children. He had come early. far too early. Half an hour before dismissal, he was already there. Leaning against the old brick wall, he watched the children running and playing, listened to the bell ring, and felt time slow down. Some parents recognized him. They whispered, "Isn't that John Blackwood? The tech billionaire? What's he doing here?" But John didn't care. For the first time, he wasn't there as someone admired or feared, just as a father waiting for his children. And that somehow felt liberating. The classroom door opened. 3 little faces burst out among the crowd. Anna spotted him first. She froze for a second, then sprinted toward him, hair flying wildly. "Daddy!" He knelt down, opening his arms. The feeling of that small body crashing into his chest tightened his throat, and before he knew it, tears were sliding down his face, hot and silent, falling into his daughter's hair. Athena and Ashley ran up too, hugging his legs, laughing breathlessly. "Let's get ice cream, Daddy," Ashley chimed, eyes shining. "I'll take my 3 princesses wherever they want," John said, with a smile that trembled with emotion. As twilight fell, he walked them home. Along the way, Ashley tugged at his sleeve. "Daddy, will you come pick us up again tomorrow?" He bent down, his voice warm but hoarse. "If you want me to, I'll come every day." "Really?" Athena asked, half skeptical. "Really, I promise." Anna smiled, a mature smile beyond her years. "Then I believe you." Just 3 simple words, but to John, they carried the weight of an entire forgiveness. Alice walked beside them, her voice low and calm. "You don't have to prove anything, John?" "I'm not proving," he said, his eyes still fixed on the girls. "I just want to stay close, until they know they can trust me." She was silent for a moment, then said softly, "They'll need time, and so will I." "I know." He turned toward her, his gaze steady, sincere, so much so that she had to look away. "I'll wait, as long as it takes." That night, after the children had fallen asleep, Alice stepped out onto the porch and sat beside John beneath a sky full of stars. "You know," she said quietly, "I used to pray that the girls would have a real father someday, and now, maybe I should thank fate." John turned, taking her hand gently. "I thank fate too," he said, "for giving me a second chance, to love, to make amends, and to become the father my daughters deserve." Alice leaned her head on his shoulder. In the silence they could hear the faint laughter of the 3 little girls from the room above, pure and bright, like a blessing. And high above, a small star flickered to life in the dark sky, like a promise rewritten.